Ask, and it will be given to you. Seek, and you will find. Knock, and it will be opened unto you. For everyone who asks receives, and the one who seeks finds, and to the one who knocks it will be opened.
My name is Andrew. A lot of you probably know me more by Hank. I was born in 1969. Grew up out in Gilpinstown. Growing up was pretty much okay. It was just a normal home, normal upbringing. Going to wee meetings on Tuesday nights and going to Sunday school on Sundays, and you were kind of like made to go to all them things. So when you got to the age where you didn't have to go to them, you went, yes, I'm free, you know, I don't need to go to them.
I'm Claire, I am 46 years old. I'm married to Mark and we have two great kids, Clara and Michael. At the minute I work as a personal trainer and fitness instructor. Love that job, love working with people. I grew up near Rich Hill with two younger brothers. Stephen was 2 years younger than me and Graham was 5 years younger than me, so I was the eldest, and I just remember our home just filled with friends a lot and life was really good.
Anne and I both grew up in a Church of Ireland environment. Anne went to St Mark's in Portadown and I was in Shankill and Lurgan. The longer I went on in the church, I just wanted to get out and be free from it. And so when I became of age that I could leave the church, I went and more or less went straight from the church into the pub.
I was told from a very early age that I needed a saviour, and actually at the young age at a summer camp in Ballywalter, I remember giving my heart to Jesus, and I was quite a bright wee Christian, you know, for a while, and then I started to grow, and then I saw the world. I didn't think of the Lord again for a very long time.
I'm Robbie and I was born in the year 1998, and I was blessed to be born into a Christian family. But whenever I was born with a disease called Erb's palsy. And my left arm was down by my side and I couldn't move it, and my neck was over to one side and I couldn't move, and one eye, my left eye, was constantly looking up. So I started attending like physio, and it was like trying to push my joints into place and things. And I was also born with cataracts in my eye, which whenever you get as a baby it's linked to brain damage. But because I was born into a Christian family, my family believed in the power of prayer, and so my dad is from England, and his church in England were praying for me, along with my Nana and Grandpa's church in England, and my mum and my granny's church here in Northern Ireland were praying for me as well. And so I'd grown up and sort of grew out of this Erb's palsy that I was born with, when I could have been disabled or could have been walking with a Zimmer frame as it deteriorated, but it sort of gradually went away, and the cataracts was gone within about 2 months, and I believe that's down to the prayer that I had and the massive prayer following that I had when I was a baby.
My father joined the police and we had to move from Gilpinstown. We moved into Mornview. We probably thought it was a good thing, but in the long run it turned out to be a bad thing, because just about that time I got caught up in a lot of troubles and stuff and all. Just got myself into a lot of bother and started drinking and stuff like that there. Right up to 89, I probably just went through a really bad stage of life where I was just in complete darkness, and I was just like getting into trouble all the time. Got caught up with a wee bit of paramilitaries and in and out of prison for 4 or 5 years. Just putting my mum and dad through absolute torture, and just thought this was normal. Thought just growing up I was just happy enough, and never really any thought for anybody else other than myself. I moved away from Lurgan, and it was just one of those times where I couldn't walk up the town, that I wasn't being hassled.
I came to know the Lord just as a 5 or 6 year old at a little club, and I think that was just a very simple faith that I just knew I needed God in my life. I then went on to go to school in Portadown and went to Queen's to study languages. University was good, and it was there that I got friendly with Mark, and yeah, he's a bit of a character, so good sense of humour, and yeah, he was just unique. So I guess eventually we decided to get married at about 24. I suppose when you get married and when you meet that person, you have a certain amount of dreams. We were married about 2 years, and I suppose we were starting to think, yeah, we've travelled a good bit now, and maybe to have kids young would be really nice. So I think I was about 27 and we started to think of children. And I suppose as the months went on, I did think, I really don't think this is going to happen. And I think I just had a deep-seated feeling that we weren't going to have biological children for some reason or another. Not to say that it didn't stress me out, and not to say that it was really difficult seeing everybody else make decisions and move on with their lives. It was about 2 years later then that we finally went for tests, and we found out with a proper diagnosis that we would never be achieving parenthood in a biological way.
When we met, first of all, Anne was 17, I'd have been 19. We drank socially and went to parties and went to dances and did all the things. It was the norm, it was the done thing. And you know, when you do that, you don't realise that along the line somewhere you pass over like an invisible line, you know, where you go from using alcohol socially to becoming addicted to it, you know. And for a part of those years, life was good. You know, really enjoyed it, enjoyed our drinking, enjoyed the holidays, enjoyed the sports cars.
We got married when I was
stuff.
21, and we built a house, and we did all the things that young people do. Charles had a really good job in architecture, and I sold shoes, and we were very happy, and life was good.
I was aware that there could be problems with this drinking, this alcohol. And on one occasion, I remember I stopped drinking for a week and said, see, I can do it, it's no problem, you know. And if it is a problem for me, then I'll stop for good. But by the time it became a problem, it was too late, and I simply couldn't stop. But eventually, the whole thing, to cut a long story short, led us to the place where we lost everything. I lost my job, we lost our home, we were homeless at one stage, we lost our health, we lost our friends and family, you know. We were excommunicated and nobody wanted to know. And quite honestly, I don't blame them.
There was not really one sort of moment where I became a Christian. It was just sort of normal for me because I was brought up in that environment in the Christian home, and my Christianity didn't really affect how I lived. I just went to church on a Sunday, and it was like a tick box activity. I didn't really have an understanding of what it really meant to be a Christian. As I moved into the college and I was around 15 or 16, I just decided I wanted to go my own way and try out some of my own things and sort of push the boundaries a little bit with alcohol and even with relationships with girls. I just didn't treat them in the right way, and so I was sort of going away from this sort of Christian life that I was brought up in. And then the opportunity came for me to go to Uganda, and I thought this would be great just because I get to play football with some of the kids. I get to see life from a different perspective, and I just thought it would be a good thing to do, and my parents encouraged me to go.
Football was a big thing in my life as well, and I was actually picked to play for Northern Ireland, and I actually refused. I don't know why. I think it was because my mate wouldn't go. I loved the football. It was my Saturdays, so it was, but it was also an excuse for a drink at the same time. In 1990, I met a girl and I ended up getting married, and probably too young. I was only 20 or 21 at the time. Just thought it was great, I'm getting married, look at me and stuff. And then the alcohol just started to come in a wee bit more, where it would be instead of Saturday night, it would have been Friday and Saturday nights, and then it just got Friday, Saturday and Sunday. And it just continued on like that there. So the marriage kind of ended after about 3 years. So it did, 3-4 years, 94 probably I would say, but we stayed together until 97. It was early 97 whenever I just said, that's it, we've just had enough, there's no point in this anymore. So we just, we went our separate ways. But in about the middle of 97, I met this girl who kind of just changed my life at that time, you know, and I just thought I'd found my soulmate. And fell in love, and I'm still with her today, and she's my best friend. We just continued on through her life, and we went out, we had the good times and stuff and all the rest of it, and then she got pregnant, so we stopped going out drinking and stuff for probably about a year and a half. And then after about a year and a half, we just kind of like introduced the drinking again, and it was just started off weekends again, but then it just got worse, and it just kept getting worse, and until it actually just got a whole grip on me, and it just became like, it was like almost every night. And there was always an excuse. There was a match on TV, or there was two flies walking up a wall, or any excuse just to have a wee drink.
Infertility is really tough. It's very isolating, and it makes you feel very inadequate, and you feel very stuck. So while you're here, everyone else is running on, making decisions and seemingly in control of their lives and building their families. And we just felt, I guess, in a state of paralysis in some way. To deal with sort of what was happening with us, I remember we booked a holiday. The whole reason for that holiday, I guess, was just to get away, to get some distance, to think. It was in September 2001, but I remember watching TV and seeing September the 11th unfold in front of the world's eyes. So we had to delay our holiday, and on the 11th of October, then a month later, we set off to the States. We had ended up in Washington. That was our last couple of nights of the holiday, and on the last morning of that holiday, I went to get my mum and dad in the room, and I left Mark in the lift with all of our bags. And when I got to my mum and dad's room, my dad was on the phone, and he was at the window, and he wasn't talking, he was just listening. And my mum, as the time progressed, which started to go in slow motion, it just felt like slow motion, and everything was changing, but you couldn't quite put your finger on it. And my mum, quickly realising that something was badly wrong at home, started to ask my dad questions. So she started to ask him what was wrong, and he didn't respond, only listening. And she started to go through the names of the people in our family, like my granddad's name and my nephew's name. He was only one at the time. And the third name that she got to was my brother Graham. And when she got to Graham's name, my dad just took hold of her arm and didn't say anything. And we just knew that he was gone, that he was dead. And for some reason, I guess my dad was immobilised. He couldn't say anything. And I just remember asking him, how did he die? Was he in the car? Was he with his friends? Was it a car accident? And he shook his head. And my next question, I have no idea why I asked it, but the severity of the situation and the awfulness of the moments, I said to him, did he take his own life? And he said yes.
Doctors sent us into ETU, and doctors tried to help us with drugs, and we went to counselling, and the thing about it is that none of those things were working. We got weeks, maybe a month, 2 months free and feeling great, absolutely brilliant. And then always the old story, we'll take one bottle a night and that'll be it, we'll not touch it again, and away again we would go. At the end of that stage, when I was about 41, the doctors finally gave me a year to live, and I knew that was no sort of exaggeration or no scare tactics. I knew for sure I was dying of alcoholism, and quite frankly I wanted to die. One Thursday morning, a lady that I worked for, her husband, came up the stairs with I call it again the leper's den, and she came in, and dear love her, she didn't know what she was going to do or what she was going to say, and she simply said, I know somebody might be able to help you. Would you talk to them? Both of us really had rejected any Christians or all that stuff. We didn't want to know about religion. Because of her love and because of the fact that she showed us that she cared, we said, okay, we'll talk to them. And that night, Tom Eakins from Starris came to our wee flat in Tullyroan Gardens at 10:30 at night.
Yes.
And what he did was a very simple thing. He shared gospel stories with us. And when he shared those wee simple stories from the Bible, he would have said, do you believe God can do this for you? And I was sort of, well, maybe you could, you know, and then he shared stories of people around the town who had been alcoholic and the Lord had touched them and delivered them and set them free, told me their testimonies. Do you believe God could do this for you? And so what happened during that week was that where there had been no hope, because you can lose all of those things that I talked about, but when you lose hope,
Yes.
that's the bottom line, that's the end of it, you know. Hope started to rise in my heart again that maybe this could happen to me. And so a process started. God was at work, you see, during that 1 week, from a Thursday to the following Friday.
I really encountered Jesus when I went to Uganda. It says that Jesus dwells amongst the poor, and I really just met with Jesus when I went to Uganda. When I got home, I was like, there's so much more to this life than what I've been living. It's so much more to just going to church on a Sunday. So I started to read, I started to pray to God when I got home and started to seek after Him. And probably the most clearest I've ever felt God speak into my life. He gave me this verse in Romans chapter 12, verse 1 to 2 that says, I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer up your body as a living sacrifice. And as a 16-year-old, I was like, what are you trying to say to me here, God? I just really felt that God was asking me to offer up my body as a sacrifice, to really count the cost of being a Christian. And I decided to do that night, and I can honestly say it was the best decision that I've ever made, and it's completely flipped my life upside down. For a few years, I was really journeying into more of that. And then when I finished school, I had the opportunity to do an internship. It was the first time in my life that I'd got a rhythm of praying and reading every single day, and I feel like as I spent more time with Jesus and got to know Him more, I started to become more like Him. The way I acted, the way I treated people, the way I spoke of people just completely changed, the way I loved people. And as I've honoured God by just surrendering everything over to Him and just saying, here I am, I feel like God has honoured me in that. He's opened doors for me to speak in church, to lead young people, to have a life group, to teach in different local schools and to play football at a high level.
Well, I said I didn't have a drink problem, I clearly did, and I would say now that I was probably an alcoholic, and because it was just 7 nights a week. Sometimes even more. Sandra became pregnant in '99 with Sophie, and whenever Sophie grew up a wee bit, she started to go to the Emmanuel Church on a Friday night, which was totally fine. But for me it wasn't fine, because I was just being selfish and couldn't take a drink because I had to bring the child down, and then I was starting rows in the house. Never thought much of it, but there was one Friday night I had to lift the child, and I came down to lift the child, and I just felt God speak to me and say, you are going to be in here. Now, at that point, I just laughed at that and just went on out, brought the kid home, and I had got my key out, and I was sitting down, just taking a wee drink, and I just felt something just came over me that this is no good. And I actually got down on my knees and prayed the prayer, as everybody calls it, and I just got up and just lifted all the drink and just poured it all down the sink, and I just haven't drunk since. For some people that doesn't work straight away, but for me it was just instant. I've just took the desire all away from me, the taste, the whole thing. At last, I suppose there was some hope, there was a purpose for living. I just think if God hadn't come in at that time, I probably would be on the streets now, I would say.
In those moments, the earth shifted on its axis for us, and it never went back. Graham was still living at home, and the night before we went on our holiday, my mum and dad, we stayed with them. I looked out of the living room door, and he walked up the staircase and sort of, motioned to me or something, and that was the last time I ever saw him alive. To go 10 days later, it was just unthinkable. It was just surreal. It just was like the worst nightmare you could ever be in. To lose a bright 23-year-old. He was working, he'd done his degree, he was playing for a local football team, he was doing really well with that. He had no obvious signs of depression or that he was struggling. To know that my brother, my baby brother, who was so awesome, had been in so much pain and wasn't able to reach out to me, was really, really hard. I guess I'd never felt an emotional pain physically, because it felt physical. It felt like a trauma. It felt like being hit by a truck, you know. You can't work out how a God who loves you and has plans for you could allow it to happen. In the midst of it all, you knew that he could have saved him and he could have rescued him, but he didn't. All my life I'd been taught that God was good, and all my life I believed, for 28 years I believed that God was good, but it didn't feel like there was any good in any of this. I learned over time and through wisdom that other Christians brought to me, I guess, that God was big enough to handle all our grief and our disappointment and our infertility and the things that we would never have chosen, and actually that maybe we felt a bit shameful of, and just this huge weight of suicide and loss. You come to like a fork in the road and you either choose this way or you choose God's way, and that hurts, that's painful, but in the pain he meets us there. In his plan, Graham was only going to live 23 years, that at 23 he was going to go and he was going to meet God face to face. And that was not what I wanted for him. That was certainly not what my parents or brother or anyone else who loved him wanted for him. But ultimately, to know that he left this earth in pain and met God in peace was just amazing. Fine.
I remember that a man that I'd gone to work for, on the first day I went into his office, he gave me a Bible. And because he was the boss and I was working for him, I said, okay, I'll accept the Bible. And I put it in the bookshelf, and it was never opened for 8 years. And so I went and found the Bible. I didn't know where to read it. And then I remembered that the man had written something at the front of the book. And I went there and I found it. And it said, please read Matthew 6 and verse 33. Yeah. So that's as good a place as any to start. So I went to Matthew 6:33 and I read, seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all of these things shall be added unto you. And I read that and read it till I read the page right out of the Bible. And the thing that's most important about that was I didn't understand why Jesus Christ came into this world and died on a Roman cross for a wretch like me. But what I decided at that moment in time was, if that's what God says, then I'll accept it like a child, literally like a child. We had nothing in our home at that time, you know. We hadn't money for a loaf of bread, and we're sharing it throughout the day for breakfast, dinner and tea. That's the place where we're at. And yet that day, I was the richest man in Portadown, without a shadow of a doubt. And I knew inside that I had been delivered and I had been set free from the power of addiction and sin in my life. And that was 27 years plus ago. And from that day to this day, it's as though I never drank in my life.
I saw a miracle. And I was a very cynical sort of person, and sarcastic in many ways, and bitter, and we had lived through the troubles, and it was all about religion, and I thought anything but this. I just saw things that couldn't be this man, because we were married at this stage 19 years and gone with him 4 years before that. I knew him, and he was my soulmate and my buddy and my chum and my drinking partner. And this thing happened to him, and I remember even thinking, they've hypnotised him or something. I just watched, and I'd love to be able to say that in a matter of a week or 2 weeks, well, I just gave my life to Jesus as well, but I'm afraid it wasn't like that. Charles had reached his crisis point, and everybody's is different. Miracles were happening in my home that I could not deny, and yet that wasn't even enough to take away the desire that I had for alcohol. People talk about the demon drink, and I surely believe it is a demon, and it possessed me. I did try, and I went to meetings. I read the Bible. I was sitting with the Bible in one hand and a glass of whiskey in this hand. 4 months of torture the most torturous, horrible time in my life.
I suppose whenever I was going up through the ranks at Glenavon Academy, I loved the fact that everybody knew I played for Glenavon. There's Robbie Norton, he plays for Glenavon, and I loved all the attention that brought of just playing football for an Irish League club. And I sort of went to football just to get pride for myself. It was a pride thing. Like, I wanted people to think well of me. I wanted people to think, oh, he's a really good footballer. And I suppose over the years I've had to journey through that just pride, and I've got to a stage now where I realise, like, God's plan for my life. I can see it all coming together. From when I was a baby, football wouldn't have been an option for me, but now I'm able to play football at a high level to reach people for Jesus. And so my prayer every time I go to training and every time I go to a match is that I'll be able to glorify God in all that I do, that I'll be able to be an example and a witness for Him, whether it's gambling or drinking or girls or whatever it is in that football culture. I just want to be that light in the darkness, and that is my purpose in football now, rather than getting all the glory for myself.
People have asked me what has the change been, and I can't honestly say what the change has been, other than it's just God. Like I say, that one night that I was in Emmanuel Church where I felt God speak to me and say, you're going to be in here. Well, little did I know that I ended up getting a job in it, and I've just been so blessed with great guys around me every day, and it's just been great journeying through this with them, and just seeing what God is doing in me and what He's doing in my family. Not long after I prayed a prayer, my dad ended up coming to faith, you know, and then his brother came, and so it's transforming lives.
In those months and years following Graham, life felt very dark. It felt very slow, like a grind, and I guess in many ways we felt our grief was compounded because we were still waiting on children, and childlessness pretty much sucks. It was difficult and arduous. I guess neither Mark nor I thought that it would be a process of about 5 years long. We had chosen the route of inter-country adoption, so Colombia, South America was the country where our papers went out to, and as the process goes on, it gets more and more out of your control. So the papers leave and you've done all your interviews, you've done everything here, you've done all your bits of paperwork, and there's not really a lot left to do except pray. I spent all night trying to get through, and eventually I got someone on the phone, and when they got our name and our adoption information, and he started to sort of hesitate on the phone, and we were at adoption panel yesterday and we've matched you with a little girl, and I just couldn't take it in. To hear about Clara, to know that we had a child, was just, in every moment, everything just changed. So the way everything had changed the years previous, this was summer, this was spring, this felt like the shackles of infertility just falling off. The morning that we woke up in Dublin, going to get our flight, I just remember Mark, who loves Christmas, saying it was like Christmas morning. This is like Christmas morning. And going to Colombia, and the next day then knowing that we would be driving off in a 2-hour drive, meeting our child, who was just over 8 months old, was just unthinkable. And about 10 minutes later, when they carried her up the stairs and turned her around and we got to see her for the first time, well, that was just, in one look at her, God restored to us everything that we felt we'd lost in the years previous. As he was in those moments, you were realising that he was in all the steps previous, that he had always been there.
I looked in the mirror in the bathroom and I had a broken tooth, and my hair was stuck to my face with just dirt and stuff, and my t-shirt was all stained and I was a mess, absolute mess. And you really don't see yourself, you know, and I knew I had a bottle in the flat somewhere, and I went searching for it and I found it. And I sat down and I drank about a half bottle of scotch. I had a number in my purse for Sister Concilio's in Newry, which is a house of refuge, And I went over to the phone box and rang the number. And as you say in AA, I just said, my name's Anne and I'm an alcoholic, can you help me? And the voice at the other end just said, have you been drinking today? And I said, yes. And I just heard these words, well, drink no more, put the cork in the bottle and come on in. Phone down. No questions. And I thought, all right. And I went over home and I sat there. And the cork has never come out of the bottle since that day. So I believe God delivered me even before, well, he had me saved anyway, but I didn't know it yet. It was just coming up to Easter time, and they brought a big cross up to the front, and there was nothing on the cross, just a wooden cross. And I don't really remember much about it because I was just looking round me, and I started to sort of hum "The Lord's My Shepherd" under my breath. And just like that, there was a voice came out over a small tannoy system. I heard these words, ye have not chosen me, but I have chosen you. I saw the cross and it broke my heart and I just fell in love with Jesus. And you know, when I told Charles that I'd got saved, he said, I think I know Anne. And Charles said to me, here's what God planted in our hearts, and I was only saved a matter of hours. We need to open somewhere like that and tell people about God. That's the answer.
That's where we started to pray about it, and we started to look, and we went to Bible college for a couple of years, to part-time course, and during this time we were always searching, always looking, and possibly for just a place where we could live and have an extra couple of rooms to bring people like ourselves and to tell them and share with them the love of Christ.
When I look back over my life, I think it's clear to see the plan that God has had for me right from the beginning, and how he's just rewritten my story all throughout my life, and how when I surrendered my life over to him, how I found purpose in him, and now I want to bring purpose to other people, whether that's in the football pitch or in school or in church. And God continues to rewrite my story and calling me to just a higher level of living, and the way I act, and my conduct, and my speech, and all that he's calling me to do in my life. And so it's been so clear that God has had a plan for me right from the beginning. God has a plan for each and every one of your lives as well. He wants to rewrite your story.
I was in that place where alcohol was my life and this was me, and I just thought it was great, but God came in, he stepped in and he just said, no, I have a future for you, there's a better life for you.
Our second adoption process unfortunately turned out to be equally as long and as arduous and as difficult. Our social worker came and gave us a piece of paper that would change our lives and Clara's lives, and on it they had Michael's profile, and in November that year, a few months later, we went to meet our son, and he was 4 years old, and he rocketed into our lives, and just the same way that Clara came to us as a little baby and changed our lives that day. You know, the first things that he said to his foster care was, they're my mum and dad. We went into adoption just wanting to bring children into our lives, to help them and to build a unit. And we could never understand, I guess, why it took so long. But if it had been a moment before, it wouldn't have been Michael. And if it had been a moment after, it wouldn't have been him either. And there was just perfection in that plan. God has a heart for the vulnerable, for the orphans, the widows, and the children who are in need.
I heard about a man called Norman who had this place in Armagh, and Hard described to me that it had 28 acres of parkland, that it had 40 rooms or something. It had 4,000 square feet of heated glass houses, and it was just sitting there. Like, well, never did I dream in my wildest dreams that that's eventually where the Lord will bring us to. And Norman handed that house over to the Workestaris, where John and I were now full-time workers, and we went and renovated the place and opened a rehab unit there for men and for women. and we served the Lord there for 4 or 5 years, ministering in ministry.
From a cave to a castle. That's what God does.
Eventually we were boarded for Russia, and we prayed much about that, and eventually then we went and moved out to Russia. And when we went to Russia, we didn't really know what we were going to do, only just to go and share the gospel. But again, God in His grace and His mercy allowed us for a place, and we prayed out there, Lord, give us a place just like Ballyard's Castle.
Somewhere like Ballyard, yeah.
You know, out here in Russia. And the Lord did exactly that. And so that house in Russia is now continuing in the ministry.
You've only got one life, like don't settle for just going to church on a Sunday. I believe that God's rewriting the story of Lurgan and Craigavon and Portadown and beyond, and we each have our part to play in that. That's the amazing thing, like God could do this all on His own, but He chooses to use us, He chooses to use you.
So when we went to New York, obviously it was just a month after September the 11th, you know, ground zero. It was still actually smouldering, and you know, tourists and locals were still going to visit it, and it was harrowing. But you know, you might have seen in the news that the firemen or whoever found the 2 beams that were fused together, and they'd raised it up as a sort of cross over the site. And when I took that photograph, I never realised or thought that, you know, 10 days later, that my life would feel exactly a reflection of what was going on there, that it would be chaotic, that it was in ruins, in tatters, in ashes, and yet the only way that I could deal with what I was feeling was to go to the cross. And that's where Jesus makes us whole.
If you go back 28 years and you had told Anne and I that we would be in Russia, in Siberia, sharing the gospel of Jesus Christ as missionaries with men and women like ourselves, we would have said, you're absolutely nuts. No way.
You're smoking something.
Not at all, yes, you know. And yet that's what God does.
God's still writing our story. We've had this 27 years, but there's more scribbling going on that we know nothing about. And to me, that's the wonder of it. You know, it's not over till it's over. And even then, it's only just begun. What a life. Would you swap it?
I found a joy and a satisfaction that I can't find anywhere else in life, that no drink, no drug, no girl could ever satisfy, that no sporting achievement, no football team, no buzz could ever give me the same way that I have with Jesus. You can't find it anywhere else in life, and so if you're not a Christian, He's inviting you into that relationship, and He's got a plan and a purpose for your life.
We all need a hope. We all need something to hope in, or someone to hope in, and that hope needs to be certain. It needs to be something that does not disappoint, and the cross is the place that does not disappoint. I'm sure there are people, someone who is listening disappointed, who's feeling hurt, let down, broken. How can I go on? To me, the cross of Jesus Christ is the place that it all starts to change.
If he can change me, He can change anybody, and you just need to put your trust and hope in God.
Ask, and it will be given to you. Seek, and you will find. Knock, and it will be opened unto you. For everyone who asks receives, and the one who seeks finds, and to the one who knocks it will be opened.